Commander Lucy Grant stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Starlight Horizon. She watched through the large window as a small alien ship moved closer. The ship was round and gray, not much bigger than a school bus. It looked old and tired, like it had traveled a very long way. Lucy was 38 years old. She had short brown hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. She had been in the Space Navy for 15 years, and she had seen many strange things. But she had never seen aliens before. No human had. Until 3 months ago, humanity thought they were alone in the universe. The alien ship docked with a soft click. Lucy straightened her uniform and walked toward the airlock. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Danny Park, walked beside her. Danny was younger, maybe 30, with black hair and a nervous habit of tapping his fingers against his leg. Danny spoke quietly. He said he still could not believe this was happening. Real aliens, coming aboard their ship. Lucy told him to stay calm. She reminded him that these creatures had asked for help. They were refugees, not invaders. The airlock opened with a hiss. Lucy held her breath. Then she saw them for the first time. The Vorath were small. Very small. The tallest one barely reached Lucy's waist. They had soft gray fur covering their bodies and large amber eyes that seemed too big for their faces. Their ears were round, and their noses were small and wet, like a dog's nose. They reminded Lucy of bear cubs, cute and harmless. The leader of the group stepped forward. He wore a simple brown robe and carried a small device that glowed blue. When he spoke, the device translated his words into English. The alien introduced himself as Ticket. He said he was the ambassador of the Vorath people. He thanked the humans for allowing them to come aboard. Lucy nodded. She welcomed them to the Starlight Horizon. She said Earth was happy to help those in need. Ticket bowed very low, his whole body bent toward the floor. The other Vorath behind him did the same. There were about 20 of them, all bowing, all looking up at Lucy with those big amber eyes. Something about it made Lucy uncomfortable. The bowing was too deep. The gratitude was too much. But she pushed the feeling away. These creatures had lost their home. Of course they were grateful. Over the next few weeks, more Vorath ships arrived. Hundreds of them, then thousands. They came in old vessels held together with patches and hope. They told stories of the Dominion, a great empire that had conquered their world. The Dominion was led by tall reptile creatures called the Skarath. They were cruel and powerful, and they had taken everything from the Vorath. Earth's leaders met and talked. The Stellar Council, which governed all of humanity's space operations, decided to give the Vorath a home. They were allowed to settle on Earth and on the moon colonies. They were given food and shelter and medicine. The Vorath were very thankful. They said they wanted to help. They asked for jobs, any jobs, even the lowest ones. They wanted to earn their place, so humans gave them work. The Vorath became cleaners and maintenance workers. They swept floors in office buildings. They fixed pipes in military bases. They collected garbage in space stations. They were always working, always busy, always smiling their small smiles. Lucy watched them from her ship. She spent more time on Earth now, helping coordinate the refugee settlement. Everywhere she went, she saw Vorath. They were in the hallways of the Naval Command Building, pushing mops. They were in the cafeteria, washing dishes. They were in the hangars, organizing tools. Danny noticed it too. He came to Lucy one evening, his face troubled. He said he had been watching the Vorath in the engine room. He told Lucy that they asked a lot of questions. They wanted to know how the engines worked, how fast the ship could go, how many weapons it carried. Lucy frowned. She said maybe they were just curious. They had never seen human technology before. Danny shook his head. He said it felt like more than curiosity. It felt like they were making a list. Lucy thought about this for a long time. She started watching the Vorath more carefully. She noticed things she had missed before. The Vorath who cleaned the weapons storage room always seemed to count the rifles. The Vorath who worked in the communication center always looked at the screens a little too long. The Vorath who swept the Admiral's office always paused near the desk where sensitive documents sat. She brought her concerns to Admiral Kate Morrison. The Admiral was an older woman with gray hair and a face that showed years of hard decisions. Her office was on the top floor of Naval Command, with windows that looked out over the city. Lucy stood before the Admiral's desk. She said she was worried about the Vorath. She explained that they were watching everything, learning everything. She believed they might be spies. Admiral Morrison leaned back in her chair. She asked if Lucy had proof. Lucy admitted she did not have solid proof, just feelings and observations. The Admiral sighed. She said she understood Lucy's concerns, but they had bigger problems. Dominion scout ships had been detected at the edge of the solar system. The enemy that had destroyed the Vorath homeworld was coming. Lucy felt cold. She asked how much time they had. The Admiral said maybe a month, maybe less. They needed to prepare for war, not chase theories about refugees. Lucy left the office feeling sick. She wanted to believe the Vorath were innocent. She wanted to believe that the cute little creatures with the big eyes were just scared refugees trying to survive, but the feeling in her gut would not go away. She found Danny waiting in the hallway. He asked what the Admiral had said. Lucy told him they were on their own. She said they needed to keep watching, keep gathering information. If the Vorath were planning something, they had to find out before it was too late. Danny nodded. He asked what they were looking for exactly. Lucy did not know. She said they would know it when they saw it. The days passed. The Dominion ships came closer. Earth prepared for war. Ships were armed. Soldiers were trained. Defense systems were tested. Everyone was busy. Everyone was scared. Everyone was focused on the enemy outside. No one paid attention to the enemy inside. Lucy continued her watch. She saw Vorath workers in every building, every base, every ship. They swept and cleaned and fixed things. They bowed and smiled and asked polite questions. They were everywhere, seeing everything, learning everything. And then, 3 weeks after Lucy's meeting with the Admiral, the Dominion arrived. Lucy was on the bridge of the starlight horizon when the alarm sounded. She ran to the window and looked out. The sky was full of ships, Dominion warships, dozens of them, each one bigger than anything in Earth's fleet. They blocked out the stars. Danny appeared beside her. His face was white. He said there were so many of them. Lucy nodded. She reached for the communication panel to call for orders. But before she could touch it, every screen on the bridge went dark. Then they lit up again, showing a single face. It was Ticket. The small Vorath ambassador was smiling, but it was not a friendly smile anymore. It was the smile of someone who had won a game. Ticket spoke. He said he was sorry for the deception. He explained that the Vorath had been servants of the Dominion for many generations. Their job was to prepare new worlds for conquest. He said they had done their job well. Lucy felt her heart stop. She asked what he meant. Ticket's smile grew wider. He told her to look at her bases. He suggested she check her weapons. He said the Vorath had been very busy. The screen went dark. Lucy grabbed her communicator and called Naval Command. The voice that answered was panicked. The voice said the Vorath had gone crazy. It reported that they were taking everything, all the weapons, all the equipment, and piling it up. They were making huge piles of everything. Lucy did not understand. She asked what the person meant by piles. The voice explained that the Vorath were sweeping everything into giant heaps. Guns, computers, ammunition, furniture, everything mixed together in massive piles. The voice said they did not know what was happening. Lucy turned to Danny. The pieces clicked together in her mind. The sweeping, the cleaning, the watching. It had all been preparation for this moment. The Cubs had tried sweeping, and they had shoveled everything into one giant pile. The chaos spread across Earth like a wave. In every city, every military base, every space station, the Vorath revealed their true purpose. The small gray creatures who had spent months sweeping floors and fixing pipes now moved with speed and purpose. They grabbed everything they could carry and threw it into piles. In the European Defense Command, a building the size of a small town, Vorath workers emptied entire rooms. Rifles went into the pile. Ammunition boxes went into the pile. Computer screens, keyboards, chairs, and tables all went into the pile. The heap grew in the main hangar until it reached the ceiling. In the Asian Pacific Fleet headquarters, the same thing happened. The Vorath worked in teams, passing items from hand to hand like a bucket chain. Missiles lay tangled with office supplies. Grenades mixed with coffee cups. Important documents sat next to broken pencils. Sergeant Maria Vance stood in the doorway of the Nevada Defense Installation, watching the destruction. She was 42 years old, with strong arms and grease permanently stuck under her fingernails. She had spent her life fixing things, making broken machines work again. Now she watched as the Vorath broke everything she had ever built. A young soldier ran up to her. His name was Pete Collins, and he was barely 20 years old. His face was red with anger. Pete shouted that they had to stop them. He said they could not just let the little creatures destroy everything. Maria grabbed his arm. She asked him how many Vorath were in the building. Pete did not know. He guessed maybe 200. Maria asked how many soldiers were in the building. Pete said maybe 50, but most of them did not have weapons. The weapons were in the pile. Maria nodded slowly. She said they would wait. Fighting without weapons would just get people killed. So they watched. The Vorath worked for 3 hours straight. They did not stop to rest. They did not stop to eat. They just kept piling things higher and higher. When they were done, the main hangar held a mountain of equipment taller than a house. Then the Vorath stopped. They stood in neat rows around the pile, their amber eyes watching the humans, waiting. The communication screens crackled to life. Ticket's face appeared again. Behind him, Lucy could see a Dominion ship's bridge. Tall reptile creatures moved in the background. Ticket spoke with that same cold smile. He explained that for generations, the Vorath had served the Dominion. They went ahead of the armies. They found new worlds. They made friends with the natives. Then, when the time was right, they prepared those worlds for conquest. A new face appeared on the screen. It was a Skarath, one of the Dominion's reptile masters. The creature was 8 feet tall, with green scales and yellow eyes with slit pupils. Its voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. The Skarath commander introduced himself as General Voss. He said Earth had 1 hour to surrender. If humans did not surrender, the Dominion would burn their cities from orbit. The choice was simple. The screen went dark. Admiral Morrison stood in what remained of her command center. Half the equipment was gone, piled somewhere in the building. She had a communication device in her hand, one of the few the Vorath had missed. She opened a channel to all surviving commanders. Her voice was tired but steady. She said she needed status reports from everyone. She wanted to know what they had left. The reports came in. They were not good. The Pacific Fleet had lost 60% of its weapons. The European command had lost 70%. The moon colonies had lost almost everything. The Vorath had been thorough. They had spent months learning where everything was stored, and they had used that knowledge well. Lucy's voice came through the channel. She was still on the Starlight Horizon, one of the few ships that had escaped the sabotage. She said the Dominion fleet was holding position around Earth. They were not attacking yet. They were waiting for the surrender. Admiral Morrison closed her eyes. She had commanded the Earth Defense Forces for 12 years. She had trained for every possible threat. But she had never trained for this. She had never imagined that the enemy would come from inside, disguised as helpless refugees. She asked Lucy how many ships they had that could fight. Lucy counted quickly. She said maybe 30 ships spread across the system. Most of them were small patrol vessels. Nothing that could stand against a Dominion warship. The Admiral asked about ground forces. A new voice joined the channel. It was Colonel Sam Foster from the North American Defense Zone. He said they had soldiers, but not many weapons. The Vorath had taken most of them. His people were armed with whatever they could hide in their pockets. Admiral Morrison felt the weight of command pressing down on her. Surrender meant slavery. The Vorath had told them what the Dominion did to conquered peoples. They became servants, workers, tools. Humanity would lose everything that made them human. But fighting meant death. Without weapons, without ships. What chance did they have? She opened her mouth to give the order. to tell humanity to lay down what few weapons remained and accept defeat. Then another voice came through the channel. It was Maria Vance, the mechanic from Nevada. Maria said she was sorry to interrupt. She said she was just a sergeant, and she knew she should not be on this channel. But she had something to say. The Admiral asked what it was. Maria said she had been looking at the pile in her hangar. She said it was a mess, everything mixed together, nothing organized. But the things in that pile still worked. The rifles were not broken, the ammunition was not damaged. It was all still there, just in one place instead of many places. She paused, then continued. She said she had spent her whole life taking broken things and making them work. She believed she could do it again. She just needed time. Admiral Morrison felt something stir in her chest. It was small, but it was there. Hope. She asked Maria how much time she needed. Maria said she did not know. She guessed maybe 4 hours to get basic weapons sorted and distributed. Maybe 6 hours to get vehicles running. Maybe 10 hours to have something like a defense ready. The Admiral shook her head. She said they only had 1 hour. Maria's voice was firm. She said then they needed to buy more time. Lucy spoke up from the starlight horizon. She said she could do that. She suggested making the Dominion talk. She said every minute they spent talking was a minute Earth could use to prepare. Admiral Morrison thought about it. It was a desperate plan. It probably would not work, but it was better than surrender. She gave the order. She told Maria to start organizing. She told Lucy to stall the Dominion. She told everyone else to help however they could. Then she did something she had never done before. She spoke not as a commander, but as a human being. She said she knew things looked bad. She admitted that they had been betrayed, and they were outgunned. She acknowledged that by every measure they had already lost, but she said that humans had faced impossible odds before. Humans had been knocked down many times in their history, and every time they got back up. She paused and took a deep breath. She told everyone that the Vorath had made a pile of their weapons. Now they were going to show those little creatures what humans did with piles. They were going to sort through them. They were going to build something new, and they were going to fight. The channel erupted with voices, soldiers volunteering, officers organizing, engineers offering ideas. The chaos of defeat transformed into the chaos of action. Maria Vance hung up her communicator and walked toward the pile. It was huge and messy and impossible. She smiled. She called out to everyone nearby. She said they were going to play the biggest game of sorting ever played. She told rifles to go on the left, ammunition in the middle, and everything else on the right. She ordered everyone to move. The soldiers around her hesitated for only a moment. Then they rushed forward and started digging through the pile. The clock was ticking. The Dominion was waiting. And humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were made of. Lucy Grant stood on the bridge of the starlight horizon, preparing to do the hardest thing she had ever done. She had to lie. She had to lie to creatures who had conquered a dozen star systems. She had to make them believe that Earth was thinking about surrender, when really Earth was getting ready to fight. She straightened her uniform and nodded to Danny. He opened the communication channel to the Dominion flagship. General Voss appeared on screen. The reptile commander's yellow eyes stared at Lucy with contempt. Behind him, Ticket stood with his head bowed, the perfect image of a loyal servant. General Voss spoke first. He said the hour was almost over. He demanded to know Earth's answer. Lucy kept her voice calm. She said Earth's leaders were discussing the terms. She explained that surrender was a big decision and they needed more time to reach agreement. The general's eyes narrowed. He asked how much more time. Lucy said 24 hours. General Voss laughed. It was a cold sound, like ice breaking. He said humans were amusing. He told Lucy she had 1 more hour, not a minute longer. Then the screen went dark. Lucy let out a breath. 1 hour. It was not enough. But it was something. She turned to Danny. She told him to contact every ship in the fleet. She wanted all of them to move toward the Dominion blockade, slowly, like they were preparing for formal surrender. She said they would look weak and defeated. Danny asked if they would actually surrender. Lucy shook her head. She said no. When the time came, they would fight. But for now, they would buy every second they could. On Earth, Maria Vance was covered in sweat and dirt. She had been sorting through the pile for 40 minutes, and her arms were tired. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Around her, soldiers worked like machines. They pulled rifles from the pile and checked them. They found ammunition and sorted it by type. They discovered communication devices buried under office furniture and got them working again. A young woman named Jenny Cruz ran up to Maria. Jenny was 23, a computer technician with messy red hair and glasses that kept slipping down her nose. Jenny said she had found something amazing. She held up a tablet computer that was scratched and dirty. She explained that this was connected to the base's main network. The Vorath had thrown it in the pile, but they had not turned it off. She said she could see everything, including all the other bases, all their piles, and she believed she could coordinate with them. Maria grabbed the tablet. She scrolled through the screens. Jenny was right. Every base that still had working communications was connected. She could see their piles. She could see what they had found. She had an idea. Maria opened a channel to everyone. She said they were doing great work, but they needed to do more. She explained that they had to share information. If one base had rifles but no ammunition, and another base had ammunition but no rifles, they needed to trade. The responses came quickly. Colonel Foster in North America said they had found 300 rifles but only 50 boxes of ammunition. A commander in South America reported finding thousands of ammunition boxes but only 20 rifles. A base in Australia had discovered a working tank in their pile, but no fuel. Maria started matching needs with supplies. She sent messages, gave orders, and made deals. She was not a general or an admiral. She was just a mechanic. But right now, she was the person making things work. In Tokyo, a teenager named Kevin Nakamura was also making things work. Kevin was 17 years old, still in high school, but he knew more about computers than most adults. When the Vorath attack began, he had been visiting his uncle at a military communications center. Now he sat in a corner, surrounded by equipment the Vorath had thrown into their pile. He had pulled out wires and circuit boards and screens. He was building something. His uncle, Captain Ron Nakamura, came over. Ron asked what Kevin was doing. Kevin did not look up from his work. He said the Vorath had left something behind. He held up a small device with alien writing on it. He explained that this was a scanner. The Dominion used it to track human communications. He said if he could connect it to their system, they could listen to the Dominion instead. Ron stared at his nephew. He asked if Kevin could really do that. Kevin smiled. He said he could try. 20 minutes later, Kevin had the alien scanner wired into a human communication array. The machine hummed and clicked. Then voices came through, speaking in a harsh alien language. Kevin pulled up a translation program on a nearby computer. The voices were Dominion officers talking about their positions, their plans, their weaknesses. Kevin pumped his fist in the air. He said they could hear everything. In Berlin, an old woman named Paula Schmidt was solving a different problem. Paula was 67 years old, retired from her job as an engineer. She had built bridges and buildings and machines for 40 years. Now she was building a weapon. The pile at the Berlin Defense Center held pieces of 3 different anti-aircraft systems. None of them worked on their own. The Vorath had been careful to separate the important parts. A targeting system from one weapon lay next to the firing mechanism from another, which sat on top of the power supply from a third. Paula looked at the pieces and saw not junk, but possibility. She called over a group of young soldiers. She said she needed their hands and their strength. She told them she had the knowledge. For the next 2 hours, Paula directed the soldiers like a conductor leading an orchestra. She told them which wires to connect, which parts to move, which buttons to press. Slowly, a new weapon took shape. It was ugly. It was strange. Parts stuck out at odd angles, and wires hung loose in places. But when Paula pressed the power button, the weapon hummed to life. The targeting screen lit up. The firing mechanism clicked into place. Paula patted the machine like it was a pet. She said this would shoot down Dominion ships. She admitted it might explode after a few shots, but it would work. In Buenos Aires, a man named Carlos Mendez was solving yet another problem. Carlos was 45 years old, a street vendor who sold fruit from a cart. He had never been a soldier. He had never held a weapon until today. But Carlos knew his city. He knew every street, every alley, every hidden path. And he knew people. When the Vorath attack began, Carlos had been near a military storage building. He watched the small creatures pile weapons in the street. When they left, he started picking up what they had dropped. Now he stood in a basement, surrounded by 50 people from his neighborhood. Some were young, some were old. Some were strong, some were weak. But they all wanted to fight. Carlos held up a rifle. He admitted that he did not know how to use this weapon. He asked if anyone knew. A woman in the back raised her hand. Her name was Rosa Delgado. She said she had served in the army 10 years ago. She offered to teach everyone. Carlos handed her the rifle. He said she would be their teacher. He said he would be their guide. Together, they would defend their city. Rosa took the weapon and began showing the others how to load it, how to aim it, how to fire it. Carlos watched and learned with everyone else. The hour was almost over. Across Earth, humans were turning chaos into order. They were taking the piles that the Vorath had made and building something new from them. On the starlight horizon, Lucy watched the clock count down. In 30 seconds, General Voss would demand an answer, and Lucy would have to give one. Danny stood beside her. He asked if they were ready. Lucy did not know. She told him maybe, maybe not. But she said they were going to fight anyway. The communication screen lit up. General Voss appeared, his yellow eyes full of cold certainty. He said the time was up. He demanded Earth's answer. Lucy stood tall. She looked directly at the alien general. She said Earth's answer was no. She told him they would not surrender. General Voss blinked. For just a moment, he looked surprised. Then his face twisted with anger. He said that was a foolish choice. He promised that humanity would burn. Lucy smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had nothing left to lose. She said maybe they would burn. But she promised that the Dominion would burn with them. She cut the channel. Then she turned to her crew. She told everyone to battle stations. She said the war had begun. The first Dominion missiles fell on the city of Paris. They came from orbit, bright streaks of fire that turned buildings into dust. The Eiffel Tower, which had stood for hundreds of years, collapsed in seconds. But the people of Paris were not there. They had moved underground, into tunnels and basements and shelters. The Vorath had not known about these places. Humans had built them long ago, during old wars, and humans had remembered them. Admiral Morrison watched the destruction from her command center. Her face was hard, but her eyes were wet. She knew more cities would burn. She knew more people would die, but she also knew that giving up meant losing everything. She opened a channel to all forces. She told them the Dominion was attacking. She said the battle for Earth had begun. She ordered everyone to defend their positions. Across the planet, humans answered the call. In Nevada, Maria Vance had finished her work. The pile was gone now, sorted into neat rows of weapons and supplies. Soldiers carried rifles and ammunition. Vehicles rolled out of the hangar, patched together from parts that were never meant to work together. Maria climbed into a truck that had engines from 3 different machines. It shook and rattled, but it moved. She drove toward the nearest Dominion landing zone, where enemy troops were coming down from orbit. She was not alone. Behind her came a convoy of 50 vehicles, each one filled with soldiers and weapons pulled from the pile. They were not a proper army. They were cooks and clerks and mechanics, people who had never expected to fight. But they were ready. In space, Lucy Grant led what remained of Earth's fleet against the Dominion blockade. The Starlight Horizon was the largest ship they had, and it was still smaller than the smallest Dominion warship. But size was not everything. Lucy shouted orders to her crew. She told them to target the Dominion sensors. She said if the enemy could not see them, the enemy could not hit them. Danny worked the weapons panel. He fired missiles at the closest Dominion ship. Most of them missed or were shot down, but one got through. It struck the alien ship's sensor array, and the massive vessel went blind. Lucy smiled grimly. One small victory. They would need many more. On the ground, the Dominion troops landed in force. They came in huge transport ships, each one carrying hundreds of Skarath soldiers. The reptile warriors were 8 feet tall, covered in thick scales, and armed with weapons that fired beams of pure energy. Colonel Foster met them at the edge of New York City. He had gathered every soldier he could find, armed with whatever weapons Maria's network had sent him. They hid in buildings and behind cars and in holes in the ground. The Dominion troops marched forward in perfect formation. They expected no resistance. They expected humans to run or surrender. They were wrong. Foster gave the signal. His soldiers opened fire from every direction. The Dominion troops, caught by surprise, fell by the dozens. Their perfect formation broke apart as they scrambled for cover. But the Skarath were tough. Their scales could stop small bullets. Their weapons could melt steel. They regrouped quickly and began returning fire. Foster watched one of his soldiers disappear in a flash of light. Then another. The Dominion weapons were too powerful. He grabbed his communicator and called for help. He said they were pinned down and needed something bigger. A voice answered. It was Paula Schmidt from Berlin. She said help was coming. 3 minutes later, a cargo plane flew over the battlefield. It was old and slow, but it carried something special. The plane's door opened, and soldiers pushed out Paula's creation, the ugly anti-aircraft weapon built from 3 different systems. The weapon fell on a parachute, landing in the middle of Foster's position. Soldiers rushed to it and aimed it at the Dominion troops. When they fired, the weapon screamed like a dying animal. But it worked. A beam of energy, hot and bright, cut through the Dominion lines. Skarath soldiers flew through the air. Their scales, which could stop bullets, could not stop this. Foster stared at the weapon. He asked what in the world that thing was. The soldier operating it grinned. He said he had no idea. He added that some old lady in Germany had built it, and it was amazing. In Tokyo, Kevin Nakamura sat in his corner, listening to Dominion communications. He had been tracking enemy movements for hours, sending warnings to human forces. But now he heard something important. He grabbed his uncle's arm. He said the Dominion was sending their main attack force to Sydney. He explained that they thought Sydney was weak because it was isolated. He said the humans there had almost no weapons. Captain Nakamura called Admiral Morrison. He passed along the information. The Admiral thought for a moment. Then she had an idea. She opened a channel to the Australian forces. She told them to make it look like they were weak. She said they should let the Dominion land, let them think they had won, and then hit them from behind. The Australian commander, a woman named Beth Turner, understood. She pulled her forces back, hiding them in the outback, the wild land far from the city. The Dominion troops landed in Sydney and found it empty. They reported victory and moved on. That night, Beth Turner led her forces back into the city. The Dominion troops were scattered, celebrating, not expecting trouble. The attack came from everywhere at once. By morning, Sydney was free. In space, the battle continued. Lucy's fleet was losing. 3 ships had been destroyed, and 2 more were badly damaged. The Dominion was too strong. Too many. But Lucy had not given up. She had noticed something. The Dominion ships fought the same way every time. They formed lines. They fired in patterns. They did everything by the rules. Humans did not have rules. Lucy called her remaining captains. She said she had a plan. She admitted it was crazy and she told them they would probably die, but she said it might work. The captains listened. Then, one by one, they agreed. 10 minutes later, the human fleet charged directly at the Dominion flagship. It was suicide. The Dominion ships opened fire, confident of an easy kill. But the human ships did not stop. They flew closer and closer, dodging and weaving, taking hits but not slowing down. When they were almost touching the flagship, they scattered in all directions. And then Danny Park flew his fighter straight into the flagship's main engine. He ejected at the last second, his tiny escape pod shooting away from the massive explosion. The Dominion flagship, the biggest and most powerful ship in the fleet, broke apart. Lucy watched on her screen. She whispered Danny's name. Then she saw his escape pod tumbling through space, alive. She screamed with joy. She ordered someone to pick him up. The loss of their flagship threw the Dominion fleet into confusion. They had never lost a capital ship before. They did not know what to do. Lucy pressed the attack. Her battered ships fired everything they had. 2 more Dominion ships fell. Then 3 more. And then, for the first time in history, a Dominion fleet retreated. On Earth, the humans watched the enemy ships pull back. They did not understand at first. Then the news spread. They had won. Not the war, but the battle. They had shown the Dominion that humans could fight. In Buenos Aires, Carlos Mendez stood on a rooftop with his militia. They had defended their neighborhood against 2 Dominion attacks. Many of them were hurt. Some of them had died, but they had held. Carlos looked up at the sky and saw the Dominion ships moving away. He felt tears on his face. Rosa Delgado stood beside him. She said it was not over. She knew the Dominion would come back. Carlos nodded. He said he knew. But he added that next time, they would be ready. Across the planet, humans began to rebuild. They gathered their weapons. They treated their wounded. They counted their dead. And they prepared for the next battle. 6 months had passed since the first battle. The war was not over, but humanity was winning. Commander Lucy Grant stood on the bridge of the Rising Dawn, the first ship in Earth's new interstellar fleet. It was bigger than the Starlight Horizon, faster, stronger. It had been built in record time, using lessons learned from fighting the Dominion. Danny Park stood beside her, now promoted to executive officer. He still walked with a limp from his injuries, but he refused to stay behind. Where Lucy went, Danny went. They were not alone. Behind the Rising Dawn flew a fleet of 40 ships, each one built by human hands, crewed by human souls. They were heading toward Dominion space, toward the enemy's home territory. But first, Lucy had something to do. She walked through the corridors of the ship until she reached the holding cells. Guards stood at attention as she passed. She stopped at one particular cell and looked through the window. Ticket sat on the floor, his gray fur dirty and matted. His amber eyes, once bright with cunning, were dull with defeat. He looked up when Lucy entered. She stood over him for a long moment. She remembered the first time they had met, when she had welcomed him aboard the Starlight Horizon. She remembered his deep bow, his grateful words, his hidden smile. Lucy spoke first. She said she had been thinking about him for months. She explained that she had tried to hate him. She told him he had betrayed humanity. He had helped the Dominion destroy cities and kill thousands of people. He deserved to be hated. Ticket said nothing. He just watched her with those big eyes. Lucy continued. She said she had learned something about the Vorath during the war. She explained that the Dominion had conquered them 300 years ago. For 300 years, the Vorath had been slaves. The only way for them to rise, to become something more than tools, was to help the Dominion conquer others. She paused and took a breath. She admitted that she understood why he had done it. She said that did not make it right, but she understood. Ticket finally spoke. His voice was small and broken. He said that understanding was more than his own masters had ever given him. He explained that the Dominion saw the Vorath as animals, good only for simple tasks. He said the Vorath had learned to survive by being useful, by being ruthless. Lucy nodded. She told him that the Stellar Council had made a decision. She explained that the Vorath would not be killed or sent back to the Dominion. Instead, they would be given a choice. Ticket looked up with confusion. He asked what kind of choice. Lucy explained. She said the Dominion was still out there, and they would keep fighting. Earth needed information about them. She told Ticket that the Vorath knew things about the Dominion that humans did not know. Weaknesses, secrets, hidden paths. She offered him a deal. She said the Vorath could share that information and help humanity win the war. In return, when the war was over, they would be given their own world. A real home, not a cage, Ticket stared at her. He said he did not understand. He asked why humans would help the Vorath after everything his people had done. Lucy thought about the question. She said it was because humans believed in second chances. She explained that her people had done terrible things to each other throughout history. They had fought wars, killed millions, nearly destroyed their own planet. But they had learned. They had changed. They had become better. She looked directly at Ticket. She said she believed the Vorath could change too. She told him this was his chance to prove it. Ticket was silent for a long time. Lucy could see him thinking, struggling with choices he had never expected to have. Finally, he spoke. He said yes. He agreed to help. Lucy nodded. She opened the cell door and stepped aside. Ticket walked out slowly like he expected a trap. When nothing happened, he looked at Lucy with wonder. He said humans were strange creatures. Lucy smiled. She said he had no idea. In the months that followed, Ticket kept his word. He told humanity everything he knew about the Dominion, including their fleet positions, their supply lines, their political divisions. Some of his information saved thousands of lives. The war continued, but the tide had turned. Human ships struck at Dominion bases, freeing enslaved peoples, destroying enemy strongholds. Each victory brought more allies. Species that had served the Dominion for generations now rose up and joined humanity's fight. Admiral Morrison watched from Earth, directing the war effort. She was older now, more tired, but her eyes still burned with determination. She had seen her world nearly destroyed. She would see it safe again. Maria Vance had been promoted to chief engineer of the fleet. She traveled from ship to ship, fixing problems, building solutions, turning impossible situations into victories. Her hands were never clean, and her smile was never wider. Kevin Nakamura had joined the intelligence service. He spent his days listening to enemy communications, finding secrets, saving lives. His uncle said he was too young for such work. Kevin said the work did not care about age. Paula Schmidt had founded a school for engineers. Young people came from all over Earth to learn from her, to build the weapons and machines that would protect humanity. She said she would teach until she could not stand anymore. Carlos Mendez had become a leader in Buenos Aires. His militia had grown into a proper defense force, protecting not just his neighborhood but the entire city. People called him a hero. He said he was just a fruit vendor who got angry. And on the rising dawn, Lucy Grant prepared for the final mission of the war. Intelligence reported that the Dominion Emperor was gathering his remaining forces at their homeworld. It would be humanity's biggest battle yet. If they won, the war would end. If they lost, everything they had fought for would be destroyed. Lucy stood before her crew. She saw Danny, loyal as always. She saw officers and soldiers from a dozen nations, united by shared struggle. She saw hope and fear and determination in their eyes. She told them they had come a long way. She reminded them that 6 months ago, they were beaten. The Vorath had betrayed them. The Dominion had attacked them. Everything they had built was thrown into piles of junk. She paused and looked at each face. She said they had taken those piles and made something new. They had sorted through the chaos and found strength. They had been knocked down and gotten back up. She raised her voice. She said the Dominion had thought humans were weak. They had thought a little sabotage and a big fleet would be enough to break humanity. But they had been wrong. She told her crew that humans did not break. Humans bent, they suffered, they fell, but they always got back up, always. She ordered the fleet to move forward. She said they were going to end this war. The Rising Dawn's engines roared to life. The ship leapt forward into faster-than-light travel, leading the fleet toward the final battle. Behind them, Earth glowed blue and green, a small world that had faced the galaxy's greatest empire and refused to surrender. Ahead of them, stars beckoned, and a future waited to be written. The Cubs had tried sweeping. They had shoveled everything into one giant pile, expecting humanity to collapse under the weight of chaos. Instead, humanity had sorted through the mess, found what they needed, and built something stronger. The Dominion was about to learn what happened when you underestimated the people of Earth. They got up, they fought back, and they won. The end.